It was a typical Monday morning when Karoline Leavitt sat down in front of the camera. The air was charged with anticipation, the sort of electricity that only comes before something big happens. She was no stranger to controversy. After all, she was used to being in the spotlight, whether as a rising political star or a fierce voice against liberal ideologies. But today, something felt different. Something huge was about to unfold. As she adjusted her microphone and looked into the lens, the words that would soon escape her lips were more than just political commentary. They were a declaration, a moment of reckoning, a line in the sand. "Imagine this," she began, her voice steady but full of purpose. "What if the mainstream media wasn't just misleading us, but actively manipulating the very fabric of our reality?" It was an innocent enough question, right? Or so it seemed. But for the liberal hosts she was about to confront, those words would set off a chain of events that none of them could have foreseen. The segment had started innocently enough. The hosts, Chip and Laura, were seasoned professionals, their banter a familiar rhythm to the thousands watching at home. They were comfortable in their liberal bubble, well-practiced in spinning narratives and making their audience feel just a little superior to the other side. But Karoline? She wasn't there to play nice. The topic of the day had been supposed to be a light-hearted discussion about the recent election results and the state of politics in America. The typical talking points had been rolled out. America was divided. The left was pushing progress, and the right was clinging to outdated ideals. Then Karoline took a breath. She spoke slowly, deliberately, as if weighing every word for maximum impact. "You know," she said, "when you talk about the left's so-called progress, what you're really seeing is an agenda that thrives on division, fear, and manipulation. And I'm not afraid to say it. The mainstream media is in on it." The reaction was instantaneous. Chip's face froze, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, while Laura stammered, trying to gather her thoughts. But Karoline wasn't backing down. "I'm talking about the way they control the narrative, the way they tell you what to think, how to feel, and when to be outraged. The way they make you believe that anyone who dares challenge their worldview is some sort of enemy." The words hung in the air like smoke after a fire. The cameras zoomed in on the hosts' bewildered faces, as if they were trying to process what had just been said. Was this just another political disagreement? Or had Karoline just thrown down the gauntlet? The energy in the studio shifted. There was an unspoken tension now, a battle of ideologies that was about to break wide open. And then, just as quickly as it began, the segment ended. But the damage had been done. The tension between Karoline and her hosts had set the stage for something far bigger than any of them could have imagined. The words that had been spoken were already echoing across social media, picking up steam like wildfire. A few hours later, the email came through. A lawsuit, a massive lawsuit, from the network itself. And just like that, Karoline Leavitt found herself at the center of a legal storm, one that would pit her against the very people who had once given her a platform. The email hit Karoline's inbox like a cold slap to the face. The words "legal action" leapt off the screen in bold red letters, and for a moment she just stared at it, her mind unable to process the weight of what she was reading. What the hell is this? She blinked twice and clicked open the message. Her heart pounded in her chest as the familiar legal jargon swam before her eyes. But it was the last line that hit hardest, for slander, defamation, and causing irreparable harm to the network's reputation. The lawsuit wasn't just a challenge. It was a full-on assault. Chip and Laura, along with their producers, had taken immediate offense to her comments. In a matter of hours, they had filed a formal suit, claiming she had gone too far with her accusations of media manipulation and bias. The network had thrown its full weight behind the lawsuit, with plans to broadcast Karoline's blasphemous remarks to a larger audience. Her breath caught in her throat. She knew the consequences of speaking out like she had, but nothing could have prepared her for this. This was no ordinary dispute. It was an all-out war. "Unbelievable," she muttered to herself, slamming her laptop shut. The anger bubbled up inside her, mixed with a gnawing sense of betrayal. How could they do this? How could they throw her under the bus so quickly, so mercilessly? Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. She saw the name on the screen: Mason O'Connor. Mason had been her campaign manager during her recent run for office and had become one of her closest allies in the political world. He was a no-nonsense kind of guy, quick-witted and always ready to go to bat for her. But when she saw his name now, the floodgates opened. "Karoline, I saw the news. You good?" he asked in his typical straightforward manner. She let out a bitter laugh. "Good? Mason, they're suing me over a conversation. Can you believe it?" "I saw the footage," he said. "What you said was bold. But this is their move. They don't like being challenged, and they're using their power to shut you down." "I never thought it'd go this far," she replied, her voice low, the weight of the situation sinking in. "I just said what everyone was thinking." "You've never been one to shy away from the truth," Mason responded. "But this is bigger than a couple of talking heads on TV. You need to brace yourself for the storm that's coming." "I don't even know where to start," Karoline admitted, her hand shaking slightly as she ran it through her hair. She was used to confrontation, used to criticism, but this was different. This was personal. The network she had trusted was now her enemy. "I'm not gonna let them do this to you," Mason declared with conviction. "But we need a plan. This isn't just about saving your reputation. It's about fighting back and making sure everyone knows who's behind this smear campaign." Karoline took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words settle in her chest. This was war now. Mason had her back, that much was clear. But she knew the stakes were higher than ever. As the hours ticked by and the lawsuit continued to make waves in the media, Karoline realized that her life had just been irrevocably altered. She wasn't just fighting a legal battle. She was fighting to hold on to her integrity, her voice, and her future. And for the first time in a long while, the battle felt deeply personal. The days after the lawsuit were a blur. Karoline barely slept, only stopping to eat when Mason or her assistant Rachel insisted. Every morning, the media onslaught intensified. News outlets, blogs, and social media exploded with commentary, some supporting her, many condemning her. The liberal talking heads were relentless, using every opportunity to tear her down, casting her as a villain who had betrayed the people for her own political gain. But what stung the most were the quiet doubts creeping into her mind. Was she really the underdog in this fight? Had she overstepped? She had been so certain of her cause, her beliefs. But now, with each passing day, the pressure built, threatening to break her resolve. Her phone rang again, dragging her out of a half-conscious stupor. The screen flashed Mason's name. "Hey," she answered, her voice hoarse. "Karoline, we need to talk. I've got some bad news." Her stomach sank. "What now?" "The network has mobilized. They're hitting hard. They've hired some of the best lawyers in the business, and they're pushing the narrative that you're a liability. I've been in contact with a few insiders, and they're already starting to prepare for a full media blitz against you. They're playing dirty." Karoline could feel her pulse quicken. "So they're going to ruin me." "They'll try," Mason replied, his voice steely. "But we're not backing down. I've already got some damage control lined up, but we need to strike first. We can't let them control the story." The air felt thick as Karoline processed his words. She knew Mason was right. She had to be proactive. But doubt kept clawing at her mind. She'd always prided herself on her authenticity, her ability to stand firm in the face of adversity. But this was different. A press conference was scheduled for the following day. Karoline could already see the headlines before they were written. "Leavitt defies network. Will she stand her ground or crumble under pressure?" The thought of facing the cameras again made her stomach churn. Rachel walked into her office, interrupting her spiraling thoughts. The look on her assistant's face was one of concern, but also determination. "Karoline," she said gently, "you've got this. You're stronger than they think. The truth is on your side." Karoline looked up at Rachel, forcing a smile. "It doesn't feel that way. Every time I turn around, I'm getting hit from every angle. I don't know if I can keep fighting like this." Rachel stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "That's exactly what they want you to think. They want to break you. But you're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for all the people who believe in what you're saying. The truth you're standing up for matters. You have to keep going." Her words pierced through Karoline's doubt, but only just. She felt the weight of everything pressing down on her, each setback more painful than the last. The media was picking apart every part of her life, every decision she'd ever made. The lawsuit was now bigger than her. It was about the entire political landscape. She wasn't just a voice anymore, she was a symbol. But deep down, she knew Rachel was right. Karoline had never been one to back down, no matter how high the stakes. This fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. The day of the press conference arrived, and Karoline stood before the podium, her heart hammering in her. The cameras flashed, the room buzzed with anticipation, and for a split second she thought about walking away. But then she remembered why she was here. The truth was worth fighting for. She couldn't afford to let the narrative be controlled. With a deep breath, she stepped up to the microphone. The next few moments would define everything. The room fell, silent as Karoline approached the podium. The weight of the moment hit her full force. Every eye was on her, some curious, some hostile, others simply waiting for her to slip. She could feel the tension crackling in the air, like static before a storm. She took a deep breath and began. "I'm not here today to apologize. I'm here because I've always believed in one thing. The truth," she said, her voice steady, but something deeper, fiercer, was beginning to stir inside her. "And the truth is, the people behind the lawsuit don't care about the truth. They care about silencing those who refuse to play by their rules." The room seemed to shift. A murmur rippled through the crowd, reporters tapping furiously at their keyboards, the camera flashes flashing like an electric storm. Karoline wasn't just speaking her mind. She was taking control of the narrative for the first time since the media firestorm had begun. But just as she felt the ground beneath her stabilize, everything changed. A sharp voice cut through the air, breaking her flow. "Excuse me, Karoline, but isn't it true that you've been privately meeting with key members of the opposition party? Could these talks be part of an even bigger strategy, one that involves you benefiting from the division you're creating?" The reporter who had spoken was a familiar one, Kenneth Doyle, a journalist known for his hard-hitting questions. His face was etched with skepticism. His eyes narrowed as he waited for her response. Karoline's heart skipped. She hadn't expected this. Her gut twisted as she replayed the question in her mind. Private meetings with opposition members? That wasn't just a simple rumor. It felt like a revelation. Her fingers gripped the edge of the podium, her mind racing to make sense of what was happening. "I have no idea what you're talking about," she said, her voice tight with unease. "I've been vocal in my criticism of both sides when I felt it was necessary, but I have no hidden agendas here. I'm standing up for the truth." But the words sounded hollow, even to her. The reporter's question had planted a seed of doubt, not just in the minds of the press, but in Karoline's own heart. Was this something bigger than her? Had she been unknowingly dragged into a game she didn't fully understand? The room seemed to close in on her. More questions began to flood in, each one more pointed, more dangerous than the last. As they stacked on top of each other, Karoline felt herself stumbling for answers, her confidence wavering. And then, as if the universe had decided to drive the point home, her phone buzzed in her pocket. Her assistant, Rachel, was texting. "Urgent. Turn on the TV. They've got something on you. You need to see this. Karoline's mind spun. What now? She barely had time to process the mounting pressure when she was hit with the most unexpected twist of all. A news report was flashing on the screen behind her, detailing an off-the-record conversation between Karoline and an influential senator, one who had connections to the very media network that was suing her. Was it true? Had she been played? The walls around her seemed to close in. She fought to maintain her composure, but in that moment, Karoline realized just how deep the web she had stepped into truly was. This wasn't just about a lawsuit anymore. This was about something far more dangerous: her own credibility, her future, and her place in the fight for the truth. Her face flushed as she fought to breathe, knowing the stakes had just escalated to a level she couldn't have anticipated. The turning point had arrived, and it was no longer just about fighting back. Now, it was about survival. Karoline stared at the screen, her mind reeling as the report unfolded before her. The footage was damning. An off-the-record conversation from weeks ago caught on a hidden microphone, where she'd discussed the possibility of working with the other side to push forward certain policies. The implication was clear. She wasn't the staunch, unyielding voice of truth she had claimed to be. No, this painted her as a politician willing to compromise, to play both sides, to broker deals that could make her more powerful. The room around her was buzzing with questions, reporters clamoring for answers. "Karoline, is this true?" Kenneth Doyle's voice cut through the noise, sharper than ever. "Have you been colluding with members of the opposition party to undermine your own position?" She could feel the walls closing in, the weight of the cameras, the cold gaze of every reporter in the room. Her mind raced, panic rising, her heart hammering in her chest. How do I fight this? The truth she'd built her career on, the integrity she'd fought so hard to maintain, was slipping through her fingers piece by piece. Mason's voice echoed in her ear, a faint whisper from her phone. "Don't let them control you. You're stronger than this. Tell them the truth, all of it." And suddenly it clicked. The truth, the whole truth. Karoline straightened, locking eyes with the crowd. "Yes," she said, her voice calm, cutting through the frenzy. "That conversation happened, but let me make one thing perfectly clear. It was never what you think it was." The whole room went still, every eye fixed on her. For a moment, the chaos paused, as if the world was holding its breath. I wasn't negotiating a backdoor deal. I wasn't selling out. What I said in that conversation was about progress, about pushing this country forward, regardless of party lines. You see, the people who want to tear me down don't care about the truth. They care about the power they can manipulate to their advantage. Her voice grew steadier with each word, fueled by something deeper than just a desire to clear her name. It was a sense of urgency, of purpose. "I will never apologize for wanting to make this country better. I will never apologize for putting truth over political convenience, even if that means standing with people who don't always agree with me. That's the kind of leadership we need." She paused, her breath steadying as she felt the shift in the room. The reporters were no longer just looking for scandal. They were listening, caught between the pull of a scandalous headline and the force of her conviction. Her words were slicing through the chaos, grounding her once again in the fight she'd started. "I've always said that the media is part of the problem. I didn't go into this fight expecting to be loved, but I did expect honesty. And what's happening now? This witch hunt? It's not about the truth. It's about power. And I won't let them take it from me." A low murmur spread through the room. Some nodded, others shifted uncomfortably, but Karoline could see it, the hesitation in their eyes. For the first time since the lawsuit, she felt a flicker of control. She wasn't just defending herself, she was challenging them all, calling out the hypocrisy, calling out the very system that tried to silence her. Then, Mason's voice again, louder this time. "This is your moment. Make them remember." Karoline stood tall, unwavering. This fight? It's not just for me, it's for anyone who's been silenced, anyone who's ever felt like their voice doesn't matter. I'm going to keep fighting, because this isn't just about winning. It's about doing what's right. The tension in the room shifted again. What had begun as an impossible battle was now a turning point, a full-scale showdown that Karoline had just taken to the next level. The media, the lawsuit, the political machine, it didn't matter. She had taken control of her own narrative, and with one final resolute look, she knew this was far from over. But now, the world knew who Karoline Leavitt was, and she was just getting started. In the weeks following her press conference, the storm Karoline had braced for began to settle. The media backlash had been intense, but something unexpected happened. The public started to listen. Her words, once dismissed as reckless, began to resonate with people tired of the same old political games. Support poured in from unexpected corners, both from those on the left who were frustrated with the status quo and from conservatives who admired her courage. The lawsuit fizzled out in the face of mounting public pressure. The network's attempt to destroy her only fueled her rise. Karoline had emerged not just as a survivor, but as a symbol of resilience. She didn't just weather the storm. She became the storm. As she sat in her office, looking out over the city, Karoline reflected on the journey. It hadn't been easy, and she had come close to losing herself in the chaos. But she had learned something important. Truth, integrity, and the willingness to fight for what you believe in were the only things that truly mattered. She smiled to herself, knowing this was just the beginning. With a steady resolve, she whispered, "I'm just getting started."